Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining us from around the world. Welcome to the final night of the Terran Summit, a platform for artistic resistance, radical thought, and collective imagination beyond the confines of borders and the reductive forces of the commercial art market. My name is Efran Riasi, and I'm the co-curator of this year's summit together with Una Matisse Yarede. This edition has been proudly co-organized by BO, the Association of Visual Artists Oslo, and the New Center for Research and Practice. Tonight, we close the edition with an extraordinary voice in contemporary art, Dora Garcia. Her work transverses performance, writing, film, and installation, consistently challenging normative narratives and exploring the intersection of politics, feminism, psychoanalysis, and resistance. Through her decades long practice, Dora has cultivated a language of presence and provocation. She navigates the blurred lines between fiction and reality, performer and audience, memory and history. Her work often invokes figures of dissent, real and imagined, as a means to question the structures of control and to illuminate alternative modes of being, learning, and loving. Please join me in welcoming Dora Garcia as she presents her talk, Transhistorical, Transoceanic, Transfeminisms. The floor is yours, Dora.
Thank you so much. And thanks thanks for the invitation, and thanks to those who are attended this final talk on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, for me, a Sunday afternoon. And I was really lucky to be able to follow the previous talks of the summit, which I found really interesting. It was the first time that I followed the summit. And so, in a way, the talk I prepare is an answer or takes into account at least the previous interventions. So I will begin, as I hope that it's not to make the talk too long, as I think it's especially interesting to have questions afterwards and to discuss a bit afterwards. So I will start by sharing the PowerPoint and start commenting on it. And I suppose that you all see it clearly. So this is the first image which impacted me from the talk of Rax Media Collective that refers to the broken clock of the 22nd of July, the part of the clock that survived the terrorist attentat in Norway of the 22nd of July, somehow the historical event that split really hurt and showed the vulnerability of Norwegian society and the vulnerability of normality. And then it caught my attention because I was thinking actually what a lot to do, how much clocks have to do with events in history, what is the symbolic capacity of clocks to speak about these kind of moments that change everything in one moment. So this is an image of the clock in place when it was broken. And then it called my attention, my memory, to another famous clock in Barcelona. I am speaking to you from Barcelona today. That is the clock of the Mexican consulate in Barcelona that stopped in January 1939 when the fascist Franco troops entered Barcelona, and the people of the consulate abandoned it in great hurry to escape. And the clock stayed in 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it stood in 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 1978. No, yes, 1978, when they came back to open the consulate again in Barcelona with the coming of democracy, more or less, in Spain. But the clock never was put in motion again. So now it's still there in the consulate of Mexico at 2 o'clock in the afternoon of 1939. As well, clocks play a big role in films like October of Eisenstein. Here we have a photogram of the film in which it shows the moment where the Winter Palace was assaulted, and therefore the triumph of the Soviet Revolution, with the different clocks in the world, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and different parts in the world, marking the time of the change of regime. And I had to move this because I cannot read my own text. And so it's not only that clocks are important in revolutionary moments, that they somehow are the object of the revolutionary fury. And here we have some text of Walter Benjamin when he describes the beginning of the July Revolution in 1830, when he says that on the first evening of fighting, it turned out that the clocks in the towers were being fired on simultaneously and independently from several places in Paris. Benjamin and the Concept of History, 1942. Benjamin also quotes an eyewitness account in which revolutionaries, as though irritated with time itself, fired at the dials in order to stop the day. So the revolutionaries were shooting at the clocks in order to stop a time that for them represented the ancient regime and as a symbol of the beginning of a new time. Therefore, they shot the clocks. The clocks were the object of their fury. These revolutionary moments, they until the beginning of the 20th century, they ended up in tragedy. And so this is a famous picture of the revolutionaries of La Commune in 1971 in their corresponding coffins, a monument and a testament of what this experiment of 7 days of revolutionary government in Paris ended up in a bloodbath because of the counter-revolutionary forces entering Paris. But so this symbol of La Commune, even if tragically ended, became a big, how do you say, symbolic moment, a model for all the revolutions to come somehow. And it was also a model for the Soviet Revolution. And it says that Lenin was so enthused by the Paris Commune that he danced in the snow the day the Bolshevik government had lasted longer than its French forebear. So nobody really, I think that not even the Lenin himself believed that there was a lot of chance or a lot of possibilities for the Soviet Revolution to triumph. And therefore, it was a kind of a symbolic border barrier that it was passed when it really survived more days than the La Commune of Paris in 1971. So both the successes and ultimate defeat of the Commune gave practical lessons to generations of Russian revolutionaries. Most importantly, that working class rule was possible. So I suppose that you see my whole screen, even if I don't. This new time that was coming with the Soviet Revolution, it also has as an important concept the idea of the new man. There was a really not only a new time, but also a whole new human era, and a new type of human was starting, and not only there was a new man, there was also a new woman. And this new woman is a bit at the origin of the word that I want to tell you about, with Alexandra Kollontai, and what was the women revolution, starting with the Soviet Revolution. So these are some materials of Alexandra Kollontai publications, and also a poster as it was distributed at the beginning of the Soviet Revolution, in which they encouraged women to leave the home, open the door, abandon their female occupations of taking care of the home and the private spheres, and step into the public sphere. This was part of the idea of the new woman, to step into the public sphere. And so here comes the title of the lecture, that is an answer to the proposal of the Tehran Summit, and the rest were those nomads who found the black holes, and to answer this with this talk about transhistorical, transoceanic, transfeminism, reminded that the prefix trans means across, beyond, on the other side of, or through. It's a Latin prefix indicating movement or location across a barrier or a space. So I wanted to make this talk around a project that is called Amor Rojo, or Red Love, but to kind of use this to refer to different things that were referred to in the previous talks and the previous lectures of the Tehran Summit. So Amor Rojo is meaning Red Love, is a film and text and research project that I carried out between 2018 and 2024. That was pitched with this sentence that you see here at the bottom of the image: 100 years and an ocean, from Alexandra Kollontai to La Bruja de Texcoco. We have met already a little bit Alexandra Kollontai, this Soviet revolutionary sexual activist, first member of the Soviet government, and later on fiction writer and diplomat. Now we're going to meet La Bruja de Texcoco, and I'm going to explain what I mean by this kind of transoceanic, transhistorical, transfeminism. So in this project, Amor Rojo, I wanted to connect two moments in time: the beginning of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century. The beginning of the 20th century, what is called socialist feminism, and of which the Women's Department of the Soviet Revolution was part of. It was a very, it was not the whole feminist of the 20th century, it was a part of feminist, socialist feminists that take into account things that the suffragette movement or the bourgeois movement was not taking care of, as it was, for instance, a question of working class women. And from this 20th century, jumping to the 21st century, of which you see this, these are all, what we're gonna see now are all photograms of the film Red Love, Amor Rojo. And what you see on the right part of the screen is one of the demonstrations happening in Mexico in 2022, in which we see one of the participants with, on top of these high heels platforms, burning different documents related to the government of Mexico. And it is as well, as I said, not only crossing 100 years, and from socialist feminists to transfeminists, it also crosses an ocean from Europe, Russia, where the Alexandra Kollontai started her work as a sexual activist and as a feminist, all the way to Mexico. At this time, at the beginning of the 21st century, 2022, with La Bruja de Texcoco, which is the artist that you see on the right side, which is it is an activist and a musician and a singer, and also an excellent example of what we're calling now transfeminism. So it is important, when I started this project of Red Love, I wanted to try to find this link between these 100 years and this ocean, between the Russia and Europe at the time of revolution at the beginning of the 20th century, and a similar, in my view, revolutionary time in the 21st century. And this link was provided by the fact that Alexandra Kollontai was a diplomat in Mexico in 26-27, and so therefore she has encountered. She was functioning as a link between the two big revolutions of the 20th century, which are the Russian Revolution and the Mexican Revolution. With this in mind, I started to try to find out what were the concepts and the elements that could be said to have metamorphosed and survived somehow from this beginning of the 20th century into the beginning of the 21st century. So it is an archival research. And here, for instance, we have this image, which I love, which is taken in a socialist congress in Copenhagen in 1910, in which we actually have an exceptional trio of women. We have Alexandra Kollontai, Clara Zetkin, and behind them, Rosa Luxemburg, taking a picture in this Congress where all the other members were male. So you see these three women floating in an ocean of mustaches. And nevertheless, kind of manifesting their solidarity with these holding hands that we see in the first in front of the image. So this image of solidarity between women among male colleagues, it is something that socialist feminists carried out through the 20th century. And so, for instance, here we have an image of the Congress of Women in Cuba in 1961, in which again we can see a group of women of different, what we would call the colonies, but that symbolize this solidarity of women and what could be non-white feminists. So in the case of, yes, how feminist socialists identify with non-white feminists. And also how I wanted to remark that all the achievements that Alexandra Kollontai made with when she was for a very short time between 1917 and 2022, when she was part of the Soviet government, like was, for instance, the depenalization of abortion, the divorce, the abolition of the religious marriage, to end with the breach of salary between men and women, to provide care for recent mothers so that they could attend their work and have kindergartens, nurseries of how you call that? Kindergartens, right? Sorry, I just forgot what is the English word for that. So that they could keep their work. These were kind of achievements that were not seen at the beginning of the 20th century anywhere, that ended sadly as soon as Stalin consolidated power, and so therefore the depenalization of abortion ended in 1936 in the Soviet Union, but they were carried out to socialist feminists into the what we would call today the global south, and what was called at the time the non-aligned countries. And this was one example of this Congress in Cuba in 1961, Congress of Women in Cuba in 1961. So it was with this idea, this connection, on how socialist feminists had navigated for 100 years between these two continents, between these two concepts of socialist feminism and non-white feminism, with which I started to work on this project of Amor Rojo that resulted in 3 films and 2 books. And we have here some images of the last film, which is called Revolution Fulfill Your Promise, and that underlines this idea of speaking of transfeminism in plural, with transfeminism with an S at the end, as an idea that in this feminism of the 21st century, we do not have, it is not, how you say, unitary, it is not homogeneous, but we have a lot of different communities and different aims and different ethnias and different ways of understanding feminists that are together in this transfeminism of the 21st century. So what you see here in the images are different moments of the Mexican demonstrations that were filmed for 5 different years. As I said, this was a project that was from 2018 to 2024, and it was a recollection of images of demonstrations in Mexico in 8th of March, 25th of November, that were part of the footage of the film. But there is something that it is quite a remarkable characteristic of this transfeminism of the 21st century, and that I wanted to relate to something that was discussed during the lecture of Rags Media Collective, and that was this idea of a pacing revolution. So if there is something that is quite describes very well this transfeminism of the 21st century, is that they are not patient at all. They are somehow, you have the feeling when you attend these demonstrations and when you listen to the chants they sing, is that somehow the patient is ended. We have witnessed through the different revolutions of the 20th century that there was always this idea that all the demands of women, that was the case with the Soviet Revolution, once the revolution was kind of organized and in good way and structured, then the demands of women will be taken care of. Unsurprisingly, this never happened. And so the demands of women, they were always postponed for a later time, when there was money, when there was time, when there was no war, etc., etc. So what you see in this transfeminism of the 21st century is that patience is up. There is no patience anymore, and it has to happen now, and it has to happen now immediately. And not only they are not patient, they are also not kind. The things they chant are, as you see, far from kind, and they also represent themselves as a real opposition to the government. So this is something that is reflected in the title of the last film, which is Revolution, Fulfill Your Promise, Red Love. And this idea or this sentence of revolution, fulfill your promise, is coming from the picture you see on the right, which is a picture of a historic feminist, Mexican feminist, Margarita Robles de Mendoza, that used to, how you say, walk around the central square of Mexico City, El Zócalo, with this hanging, this big sign hanging that was saying, revolución, cumple tu promesa, emancipa a la mujer, or revolution, fulfill your promise, emancipate women. So this was in 1936, and this is the kind of one of the things that perpetuates in today, is that finally revolution really has to fulfill its promise. So this is another image of the film, which I especially like, because somehow the face of this woman reflects all this anger, all this, how you say, ending of patience, to say now is really the time, and now we are not taking any more calm down, we are not taking any more wait, we're not taking any more just wait for a better moment to so that we can end with the violence against women, that we can depenalize abortion, the most fundamental rights that if you think about, and it's also 100 years that have been fought for. And like in the case of Russia, it is you could get them and then you did not get it. So that means the rights you conquest are not there to stay. They do not get them once and forever, but somehow you have to keep fighting for them, because otherwise every 10 years they are very likely to disappear. They're very likely to be taken away. That is like it has happened in the United States, like it is happening in the United States, like it has happened in Poland, etc., when the right of abortion and to free reproduction has been taken away from women again and again. But there are especially, and this is what the film underlines, there are especially three concepts that are especially important for me to underline, that have metamorphosed and survived between these feminists of the 20th century and feminists of the 21st century. So here we have the title of the film, Revolution, Fulfill Your Promise, now Red Love, and then we have these three concepts that appear in the writings of Kollontai, and that are also central 100 years later in the transfeminism of the 21st century. So one of them is class solidarity over gender solidarity. This is something that has been running since the beginning of the 20th century until now. So this idea that we must, because we share a gender, we must have the same aims and the same objectives, and somehow we have always, the working class women, they always have to be submitted to the wishes and demands of bourgeois women. Kollontai would say, we will say now cis women, or we will say now European white feminists. So this idea that actually you don't have a real feminist unless you speak of class and you take into account the question of class was something that was Kollontai wrote about extensively, and it is a question that has still not been solved, and that is very present in the writings and the demands of transfeminists in the 21st century. So there is no feminism without the question of class. And this idea of class, it is not only related to the idea of working class, it is also related to the idea of colonialism, as the consciousness of colonialism has completely changed forever this idea of class, as it is not something that exists in one country alone, but is connected to a globality in which the working class identifies with the colonies and the ruling class identifies with the metropolis. So no question of no feminism without the question of class. A second concept was the idea of abolishing the family, which is a concept that is now very, really, lots of books have been published in relation to this. The first time I read Kollontai speaking about this concept of abolition of the family, I was quite shocked, because I did not expect to find such a radicalism in 1910, that is when she wrote it, saying this sentence that romantic love is the most efficient tool of the bourgeoisie to guarantee the submission of women. And 100 years later, we're still there. Romantic love is still alive and well, and it is still the most efficient tool of patriarchy to guarantee the submission of women. So Kollontai says there is no way, as he was referring to the bourgeois family, we might refer now to the heterosexual family or heteronormative family. This idea that unless we reform, unless family changes radically and abandons the patriarchal structure, there is no way we can speak of a liberation of women. So no liberation of women without abolition of the family. And finally, a very interesting concept that is the comradely love, which is really coined by Kollontai. It is her distinctive concept, comradely love, and which is remarkable to hear about when you have been fighting with this idea of romantic love. So romantic love is a very efficient tool for the submission of women, but somehow in which way comradely love is different from romantic love. And here I have selected some photograms. As I have perceived in the talks before, the video doesn't work very well. I have selected some photograms to reconstruct a quote of Kollontai in relation to this idea of comradely love. So solidarity should not be understood as the mere awareness of a community of interest. Solidarity is also the sentimental and spiritual bonds established between the members of the same collectivity. These feelings of sympathy, gentleness, and sensitivity derive from a common source, the capacity to love. Not love in a purely sexual sense, but love in the broader sense of the word. And so this is the quote of Kollontai in relation to how love can be turned into political capital. And to explain this concept of comrade love, I wanted to quote Jodi Dean in her absolutely fabulous book, Comrade, which I recommend everybody to read, in which she defines what comrades are. And comrades are equals on the same side of a political struggle. Voluntarily coming together in the struggle for justice, the relationship is characterized by discipline, joy, courage, and enthusiasm, which is a very powerful image, this idea of on the same side of a political struggle, voluntarily coming together in the struggle for justice. And it is especially nice to read the book of Jodi Dean when she explains that actually comrades, they are not friends. And this is something that is quite important for me, as we often create our communities based on this idea on friendship, and how you actually may very well be comrade with someone that you do not necessarily like. So this idea of love not only going beyond the idea of romantic love, but also going beyond the idea of friendship. And so going into Kolontai, the original idea of comradely love, it says that Kolontai firmly believe in the emancipatory potential of non-commodified and thus non-possessive relations among free individuals, not bound by economic dependency. That was the very definition of marriage, the idea of economic dependency from women to men. This was one of the things that had to be immediately abolished, this idea of the family in which women were depending on men, but also the idea of romantic love as the prototype of a possessive relation that completely encapsulates the couple. So it has to be broken, this idea of commodified and possessive relations. She believed in the social value of what she called love solidarity, based on comradeship and equality, and contends this will become the lever in communist society that competition and self-love were in the bourgeois society. So this idea of comradely love as a love that transcends the couple, that even denies or negates the couple and goes into the community, a community that is not really of friends, but a community of comrades, and that concentrates in a non-competition and solidarity as the threat, as the marks of this society, communist society, as it was. Kolontai was a communist. This idea of comradely love, which somehow goes all through the film, it is really condensated in this image of one of the protagonists of the film, which is a trans woman called Lahabi. And that is, as said, gives the image to the film, Lahabi, that has been victim to countless manifestations of hate, and has been beaten countless times, and that has suffered patriarchal violence more than anyone I know. She decided to tattoo on her cheek this "Te quiero," I love you. She said, as a sort of mirror. She explained to me, I wanted to tattoo this on my cheek that has been beaten so many times, as a sort of mirror to show the people that attack me that in fact I do love them. So to me, this was quite I have to say, not a moment of truth in which I understood what this idea of comradely love meant. So this film or this project, Amor Rojo, was in common with the general theme of the Tehran summit, black holes. It uses this idea of acrony, that you can put together different times, kind of fold them together like if they were made of paper, and they start affecting each other. So you can put together something that happened 100 years ago to something that happened 2 years ago. You can put together some text that is read in the 70s together with some text that is written in 1910. And somehow by this kind of folding together of times, this idea of acrony, you manage to change the meaning of all these different moments. And so the film is full of these coincidences of falling together of moments. So you have the projection of the battleship Potemkin with the image of the women crying, this icon of women crying, and then we put it together with Lahabi as she's explaining all this violence he has been submitted to, and this from this idea of sadness, or this idea of going to the extreme of suffering in order to bounce back into rebellion. I put together different moments in time in order to consolidate them together as one single movement of a struggle. The same, the idea of maternity, with this image coming from a film of Russian propaganda on these nurseries or kindergartens that were offered to the working women, to goddesses and holy figures coming of 700 years ago, 1,000 years ago, from the pre-Columbian times. This is one of the images or statues that are kept in the Anthropological Museum in Mexico, showing, and I'm not sure what it is showing, but to me it is showing like this idea of mouth of the baby waiting to be breastfed, and this image of helplessness and need of help and solidarity, of love being received. And the same with this, with the image or the iconography of raising the fist as a symbol of a struggle. This is an image coming from the 70s from the Communist Party archive in Mexico, to the image of the women raising their fist in Battleship Potemkin, for instance, or the confrontation of motherhood of the woman with a child. Is the image of the Pietà that is confronting the state and the aggression of the state and the brutality of the state, with images filmed in 2022 on the demonstration, in which the monuments of patriarchy, of the construction of the nation state, are defended and protected by the state forces, and all the women are behind that wall, addressing directly the state and addressing directly history, and confronting this state order, or this nation state order. But this film was finished in 2024. The footage that makes the film was filmed in 2019, 2022, and where are we now? So this is a bit, when you are working on this acrony or black holes of time, and you fall together on these different moments in time of struggle, what happens often is that, quoting Lenin, as I said, there are some years where nothing happens, and there are some years where decades happen. So in 2023 and 2024, I think decades have happened, and somehow they have made, not to my regret, I just accept the thing, somehow the film immediately old-fashioned, because so many things have changed in these 2 last years. So here I have collected some of the things that have made me rethink this idea of red love or revolutionary love. So, for instance, this idea that the backlash, the reactionary backlash, the fascist backlash that we are seeing everywhere in Europe, in the United States, all over, in India, all over the world, it is often explained as a reaction against feminists, like feminists have gone too far. Feminists have gone too far. And here I have this news of half of Generation Z, which are young people, and often thought of youth identified often with revolutionary energy. They think feminism has gone too far and makes it harder for men to succeed. Almost 1 in 5 boys and young men aged between 16 and 24 hold negative views about feminism. So this is one thing that makes me reflect on this concept of red love, and how it is being used, in fact, to justify a reactionary wave. Has feminists gone too far? Another thing is that this Palestine is a feminist issue, with this quote of Mariam Barghouti: fundamentally speaking, feminists cannot support racist supremacy and oppressive domination in any form. This is something that is directly relating to this idea of socialist feminists. Socialist feminist is called socialist because it's a feminist that defends socialists, not because it's a particular type of feminist related to socialists, but because they think that you cannot have feminists in capitalism. You only can have feminists in socialists. This was the idea of socialist feminists. But it turns out that you also cannot have feminists unless you are anti-colonialist. You also cannot have feminists unless you are anti-racist, anti-supremacist, and of course, unless you oppose the idea of Palestine and the fight against the murderous colonial regime of Israel. So this is something that made me also bounce back into this idea of red love. It is not only that feminism has to be socialist, it also has to be anti-racist, anti-supremacist, anti-colonialist, anti-oppressive domination in any form. And also one of the most painful moments of the extermination operation of Israel in Gaza was this picture that I guess you all have seen, in which there is a soldier that holds up a pride flag over the devastated Gaza, saying, in the name of love. So this idea that, incredible as it sounds, there is quite a lot of people discussing it, that you have somehow that you, in order to advance LGBT rights, you also have to advance the colonial project in this typical colonial opposition between the savages and the civilized forces. You know, if you are a part of the savages, you should, and you happen to be LGBT, you should embrace the colonial forces as a liberation, because finally you can live alone. You can live your life as you want. So the absurdity of this, and not only the absurdity, the shamelessness of this perspective, of course, exceeds the scope of this lecture, but it is something that was really made me, as I say, bounce back on the idea of red love, on how you really have to think of a feminist of anti-colonial, but also of a feminist that puts always class and the notion of oppression at the very center, beyond any other consideration. And only then, when you put yourself on that side, you can speak of true feminism. So in this idea of backlash, or reactionary backlash, sorry, somehow it's super late already, of reactionary backlash, it is something that is not new at all. So I wanted to just devote a couple of slides to how all these revolutionary roads walked by feminists, it has constantly been prey to disappointment. I wanted to use this quote of Angela Davis to point about not only the disappointment of feminists with the reactionary counterparts, which is to be expected, but much worse than that, the disappointment of feminists with their comrades, with their male comrades. And to quickly read the quote of Angela Davis, some of the brothers came only for staff meetings sometimes, and whenever we women were involved in something important, they began to talk about women taking over the organization, calling it a matriarchal coup d'etat. All the myths about Black women surfaced. B and R and I were too domineering. We were trying to control everything, including the men, which meant by extension that we wanted to rob them of their manhood. The brothers opposing us leaned heavily on the male supremacist trends that were winding their way together through the movement. And they knew that B, R, and I had moved into leadership of SNCC because of their own defective commitments. And the same type of disappointment happens with trans revolutionaries, with their cis comrades, with the famous speech of Sylvia Rivera in New York City, when they didn't let her speak in the day of the Pride, gay Pride, and then she had to climb and fight their way onto the platform to speak. And among many things, this is a speech that is really absolutely wonderful to read. Among the many things that she said, the people are trying to do something for all of us, and not men and women that belong to a white middle-class white club, and that's what you all belong to. So the disappointment of trans revolutionaries with their cis comrades. And then I wanted to almost close the talk with, again, a quote of Kollontai that comes in the film, Revolution Fulfilled Your Promise, Red Love, in which she gives her view on this idea that I've been talking about, that feminists cannot exist unless it is always on the side of the oppressed, unless it is always anti-racist, anti-supremacist, all these anti-colonialists. Only there feminists can exist. And so this is a direct quote of Kollontai, as it is subtitled in the film. We must not forget, and we do not forget, that if the aim of bourgeois women is to secure their own well-being, our aim is to build in the plate of the old, obsolete world a shining temple of joyful freedom. So this is the quote of Kollontai indicating that, in fact, it is not to the aim of feminists to advance, let's say, the only the rights of women, but it is above all to turn the whole world upside down, which is what a revolution means. It really to change completely the order of things. It goes well beyond the idea of rights of women. It goes into the rights of everybody. So to finish the talk in a kind of optimist note, I wanted to also use this another photogram or a film still of the film, which is a banner, a flag, a sign, a demonstration sign that it is also used in these feminist demonstrations in Mexico in 2022, in which they say, we are resisting because the world can be healed. So this is also in relation to some of the discussion that was done in the previous talks, in which about what sense can it have to make art in a time of fascism? What sense can it have to be an artist, to produce art in the time of fascist artificial intelligence? So to me, this kind of sign is really a note of hope and a call to arms, if you want, in whatever circumstance, whatever happened, however desperate the situation can be. We are resisting because the world can be healed. It always makes sense to resist in whatever capacity everyone has, whether big or small, because the world can be healed. And as I also opened the talk with quoting Walter Benjamin, I also wanted to close it with a quote of Walter Benjamin, which is a bit less optimistic, that we are resisting because the world can be healed. The thesis seeks on the concept of history with two quotes. To articulate what is past does not mean to recognize how it really was. It means to take control of a memory as it flashes in a moment of danger. And the only writer of history with the gift of setting alight the sparks of hope in the past is the one who is convinced of this, that not even the dead will be safe from the enemy if he is victorious, if the enemy is victorious. So this is my last slide, and I wanted just to say a couple of words of the image that goes with the slide. This is how you say, in Spanish you say salvoconducto. That means the paper that the Spanish authorities stamped for Walter Benjamin in order to allow him to pass through Spain on his way to emigrate to the United States. And as you well know, once he passed the border in Spain, he was told that he would not be admitted because he didn't have another paper that was missing, and therefore he was going to be sent back to France and to the Gestapo, and then following that, Walter Benjamin committed suicide in Portbou at the border between France and Spain. So in this act of maximum despair, I wanted to use this image to underline this last sentence, that not even the dead will be safe from the enemy if the enemy is victorious. And therefore, it makes all the sense in the world to keep the resistance. And this is my last slide. And I'm happy to say that was below 1 hour. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Dora. Really appreciate it. Really amazing talk. Una, if you have any questions, or anybody else, but
Yeah, I can start. Thank you so much, Dora. It was really wonderful. When you were talking, I just started thinking about like how a lot of revolutionary movements sort of start off with someone who's like already sort of oppressing, and then it kind of goes to move upwards in the chain, and then it reaches sort of the middle class element, which is often also where it sort of stops. I was thinking about the female storming of the Bastille, for instance, starting off the French Revolution. But also, yeah, in general, also what's happened in Iran with the women freedom situation. So I don't know. I would just like to think a bit about that loud, I guess, and I wonder if you want to expand on it.
Yes, actually, as I say, I'm always amazed that when I say things that I think are without discussion, how much backlash that produces. And for instance, one sentence I use a lot is that all revolutions were started by women. And this is not, how you say, a poetic license. It's really true. All revolutions were started by women, mostly because, incredible as it is, revolutions start simply because the basics elements of life are missing, because it's impossible to live. And the impossibility of life is immediately triggers females. And so, for instance, the October Revolution started in January with a big protest for the price of bread. In the case of the Commune, it was started by men and women, but it was completely organized by women that started the whole process as La Commune was had to become self-sufficient while you were surrounded by the imperial army. You had to become self-sufficient in the city of Paris. So there were women that organized this self-sufficiency in order to have everybody fed and have everybody clean, and what we're going to do with the children. So it is. These are two examples, and I could go through all examples, but indeed, all the revolutions have started by women. And somehow they, after the revolution, they have been forgotten. They have been forgotten either by name or what they were demanding, which is actually quite simple. That means to be free in reproduction and to be economically independent. This was to have access to education, extremely reasonable demands. They were always put on hold, on standby, like we first will fix the revolution and then we will listen to these demands that are not urgent. In the case of Kollontai, although it was, we didn't really have time to go through that, it is quite interesting to see how much hate she provoked in the male and female revolutionaries that consider that sex was really something that was not relevant at all in the revolution. And so Kollontai, with her sentence, there is no revolution without sexual revolution, which is also something that you could read now in any demonstration of LGBTQ plus rights. She completely, everybody hated her for saying that. And this is just something that is quite remarkable, that these demands was met with misunderstanding, with indifference, or with hate, ultimately.
Thank you. I mean, also I'm thinking about like you're mentioning of Angela Davis, and I guess also the bourgeoisie, in the sense that I've been reading a lot of William Morris lately, and he's very he's not very fond of the middle class, and I guess it's kind of like the same threshold that is being put into place, where you have this sort of division of power amongst the working class in order to keep the people that are on the top on top. I think it's something that enters both in the sense that men and women are divided, but also in terms of this like intellectual class that is often placed above sort of the working class, and there's created a distinction between the two, which enables the bourgeoisie, or the people that are, yeah, the richest, to remain so, because people are too eager fighting each other. I feel like a lot of the backlash that is happening now in terms of feminisms, in terms of queer rights, and also like the discrepancies between intellectuals and working class is reflecting a lot of that. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, this is somehow a subject that has always exceeded me, the intellectuals and the working class, because I am a bit confused about what intellectuals really are. And while working class is very clear to me, if you have to work to live, then you're working class. Then what is really an intellectual escapes me. I think it's a concept that escapes me. There was a definition that was used by an Italian author in which it mentioned the intellectuals were really accomplices of the regime always. So you had by default as an intellectual, which I guess someone who lives from his intellect, you were always an accomplice of the regime, and you had to fight that as an intellectual in order to be on the side of the working class, because yes, this idea it was Antonio Gramsci, of course, in this idea of the sorry, I forgot now what is the term that he uses. Maybe someone knows it. The intellectual that is really supporting the structure of the establishment, and only it has to make a big effort in order to counteract that. But that was then, and now is now. And I have to say that it is really confusing to me who you can call an intellectual. I'm not sure that artists are intellectual. I don't know, maybe someone has ideas regarding this, because yeah, I didn't come to a conclusion about that. I know there is a lot of class, how you say, guilt in artists, for instance. The idea that you belong to, whether you, as much as you hate it, you belong to an established or to a, how you say, a bourgeois class. But I'm not sure if this is something that can be extended to intellectuals. Maybe someone has an idea about this.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone else has questions, please feel free to write them in the chat or to raise your hand. Also to follow up on that, I guess also there's like, I think I'm thinking a lot about the discourse in Norway right now, but also, I mean, in the rest of Europe and the US, which is like the discourses that I follow the most, where it's becoming very clear that cultural policies and like governmentally funded arts is something that's being very heavily targeted by the neo-right and the fascist movements, which are predominantly, you know, trying to reach, I guess, like a traditional working class voter, and doing so by creating this division between what they might refer to as intellectuals and working class. And then I guess the question that keeps coming back to me is whether, you know, people of this kind of intellectual class or the people that are being seen as intellectual, if we've somehow, like, I mean, also as a part of the speaking class, which is often called, like the people that actually express themselves in media and so forth, have neglected, you know, this group of people that are now being targeted by the right, and successfully so.
Yes, there's again a problem I really don't have a solution for. For instance, something that puzzles me greatly is this idea that all opinions are respectable. The idea that you, okay, you have your left-wing ideas, but you also have to respect the Nazi ideas. So this is something that obviously can't be. It's not possibly true. And then the idea that you saw a big part of the working class in France, for instance, Norway is still a mystery to me. I do not really understand but in France, for instance, the working class is completely warned by the fascists, and not only the working class, also the working class in the countryside, with always the same, you know, agitating the idea or presenting the idea that foreigners are going to come, they're going to take their wives, they're going to take their homes, and they're going to take their jobs. So this kind of primal fear is instilling into this working class, and then they support the fascists. I have a lot of difficulties, and I really would like to know what other people may think about this, that you can really talk someone out of fascism. I wondered if that is possible. I mean, I know, for instance, that how important education is. For instance, obviously, democracy is not something that depends on voting. It's something that depends on having a free press, having a good public education, having the right to gather, all these kind of things. But I know how fundamental it is in order to escape fascists, but I really have a lot of doubts whether you can reason with a fascist. I don't know. I really would like to know if someone has an opinion on that. I have never been able to, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes back to me a lot is the Reichian writing after the Second World War about how, under certain circumstances, people will turn to fascism, and how this like kind of conservative movement and backlash is also, if you look further back at them historically, like for instance, the witch hunt of the 17th century was triggered by the price revolution, which was this huge inflation rate. So that somehow like these things are very intertwined also with economics and social movements, like in a bigger and larger sense. And I guess if you make someone, I mean, that's also, I think, what's interesting about fascism is that it's also sort of a revolutionary spirit that lies there, you know, when you push people like to the edge, either it goes in like a revolution, which is like a left-wing revolution, or you have something that counters it, which is more right-wing, which would be fascism. And I guess the moment we're in now also, like with inflation, which has been going on for a long time, and like the average person is getting poorer and feeling like some kind of loss. And that also is very fruitful if you want to place competition into that. Like as you said, with the French working class being told that immigrants are going to take their work or they're going to take their wives, you know, there's this like idea that it's you or me, and then I have to push whoever's under me down so that I can sustain myself.
Yes, I think this is something that also was mentioned in one of the talks, this idea that fascism is revolutionary. It is not. I really don't agree with that. Fascism is there to preserve the structure. And whether they, how you say, how much followers of extreme right realize it, I don't know, but it is really brought into place in order to preserve the economical structure and the structure of oppression and the class system. It has always been like that. I mean, it was yesterday in the talk of Ito Steyer that she showed this John Hart film image, which is super clear. It has always been like that. And for instance, one thing that is the more you know about it, the more you marvel at how. I mean, Russia and the Soviet Union is another story because it's also a colonial story, etc. But places like the Cuban Revolution or the Burkina Faso, all these places that Madagascar that almost got a revolutionary government. In the case of Cuba, they got it for a while. It is wonderful that they achieved that. It's a miracle because the forces that were set against them, how many times Castro was, they tried to kill Castro, what they did, for instance, in Chile and all these kind of things. So everything, not only nationally, but internationally, is against constructing governments that defy the structure of oppression. And it is really a miracle when one of them survives, when one of them achieves something. However much we might discuss about what's going on in Cuba and in other places, of course, everything is complex, but at least they managed, they survived, they did the revolution. So this is quite amazing, I think.
Are there any other questions?
I really wanted to hear the opinion if someone thinks that you can discuss with a fascist.
But I know that I've talked so much during the all the sessions, and I really love to, like, when it's the time when it's a session about like these issues like feminism, I would rather just sit and listen and be educated and learn rather than be the one that keep asking questions, you know. But I would love to have the audience to sort of chime in and sort of ask any questions. But also have one which is not directly about fascism or feminism, but also somehow related because it's a okay, Minu Noruzi.
Oh, no, go ahead and ask your question. I'll wait.
Okay. Um, it's kind of related because it's about changing the narrative and also sort of it's germane to the whole concept of black holes, which when we came up with the idea of the black holes, for us, for me and Uno, it was like a symbol of a space that defies objective laws.
Mhm.
and kind of shows you that the outside reality can be altered. That's what black hole is, and so there is this quote from Gigi Ballard, which I know that you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
based on my research on
Research.
Dora
Yeah.
Garcia. Yeah, that
Yeah.
says the artist's job used to be the ones that narrate, that tell us stories, and now we are
Mm.
surrounded by stories, and artist's job today is to show us the reality. And I want
Uh-huh.
your opinion on how, since you work with different mediums, including film,
Mhm.
is it possible to show the reality through narratives? Or is it possible to
Yeah.
change it even?
Yes, well, I am of the belief, apart from Ballard, I also have read a lot of Lacan. And with Lacan, I think actually reality is inaccessible. You only access reality through stories. It is or language. Yeah, through language, because the real is not accessible. It does that what defies language, and sometimes the real falls on us, like in the case of war, the pandemic, all this kind of thing, where we are completely at a loss of words. But normally, everybody tries to make sense of what is happening, and the only way to make sense is through language, through narrative, through stories that do not necessarily have to be linear. But also, I actually think that the fight is between narratives. So this is how you access reality. It is through being able to offer a different angle to look at a narrative that is predominant. I have recently I had a very clear idea of this when I read a book on Puerto Rican independence movements and how they were brutally crushed by the United States. Puerto Rico is a colony state today. And these stories, which I didn't know anything about, of how brutal the repression of the independent movement of independence in Puerto Rico was by the United States, made me question, I have grown up with this idea that the democracy won over fascists in the Second War. That it is thanks to that. I mean, Trump is saying it even today. Thanks to the United States, a force of good and a force of democracy, the free worlds survive and thrive until now. And the atomic bombs, you had to. Israel, well, it was necessary. All these things, and so when you are able to actually introduce through a book, in this case, through a film, a narrative that challenges and makes you understand that your view on reality was completely biased, you did not even realize that you had been indoctrinated into a way of seeing the world that served the establishment, the structure, the system of oppression, as I believe I have been indoctrinated and still believing that I was, how you say, that I had the truth of history. So I think this is something that you can do. It is not so much that you show the reality, but actually that you're able to introduce a point of view that it is new and that makes you realize the obvious bad narrative, which is a way to call lies, the obvious bad narrative that you had been educated into, and that your whole life was built on it. Your whole political view was built on it, and actually it was far from the truth, or it was. I mean, all these questions had all this idea of truth and lies has to be revised, but certainly it was not reflecting the complexity of events, and it was not reflecting the inheritance of the people who lost their life fighting for a better state of things, for something that represented everybody. So I love Ballard, and indeed I understand what he says. You have to represent the truth. I understand the truth as a counter narrative. This is what truth is something that challenges the imposed narrative that is imposed on all of us.
Yeah, definitely. There's also this quote from Bertolt Brecht that says, "Art is not a mirror that reflects the reality, but a hammer that shapes it." Which
Yes,
also,
Actually, he never say that, but it's this kind of fake quotes. But,
Is it? But that's a
yeah.
dope quote. That's a dope quote.
Yes, he never say that, but you know, it's a nice quote. Yeah.
All right, Minuja.
My brain is now moving in lots of different directions. So I wanted to pose a question to Dora about something that you said earlier, but I also maybe briefly come back to this question you had about whether one can be friends with a fascist or
Well, not friends, just talk to, just talk to.
yeah, I just realized that. Or whether one can be amicable with or convinced. I think, I mean, you use different words.
Yeah, to discuss, to be able to reason with a fascist.
Reason, that's right, that's the word,
Yeah.
And, you know, like I have very emotional reaction to that question because I spent my whole life sort of predicated on, or not just my life, but also my work predicated on the idea that you could have sort of lateral relationships or you know, interhuman relationships with people who are not necessarily on your side of the struggle for various reasons, fear-based reasons, that is the foundation of fascism and so on. So of course the October 7th events in my artistic and scholarly community definitely made the C part, you know, where we as a community of cultural practitioners or if we like to put ourselves in that boat as intellectuals, there were varying degrees of or solidarities that were pulling in various directions amongst, let's say, Israeli artists and friends who definitely had a known sense of patriotism, but were also liberal artists and members of the community. And those of us who had stronger allegiances to pro-Palestinian causes, and the sea definitely parted at that point, because whilst we were able to maintain those frictions during relative times of, under inverted commas, normality, 75-year normality, you know, at that point, there was no longer any pretense of any amicable relationships anymore. And I can definitely vouch to the great upset and disappointment of this moment of losing the belief that it's possible to be amicably aligned with people who are not on your side of the struggle necessarily fully or wholeheartedly. So, so I'd say yes and no, you can, but okay, some months later, you know, I've returned to believing that I must try to exercise kindness and understanding towards fear-based responses to what certain moments or times refer to as enemies. You know, like we become enemies, and yeah, I want to hold on to the belief that it's possible to have civil, amicable relationships to people who are not necessarily on the same side of the struggle. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
That's not a question. That's just like a response. And then the question I had, you're of course free to respond.
Yeah.
Anyone's free to respond. But I just thought if I may take another 2 minutes to ask a question, which is completely unrelated to this, if you could elaborate a little bit on, because I haven't seen the film that you were referring to, Red Love. I was curious very much about what you said about how in the last couple of years, decades happened, and how that dated the film. And I wanted to know more about how, from your perspective, it dated the film.
Yes. Well, regarding the first comment, I had to think of the famous quote of Rosa Luxemburg that was so referred to during the, how you say, revolution of the Eastern Bloc, that freedom is the freedom of the one who thinks different. This is something I believe, and I do not, what I mean to say is to reason with Nazis, which is something else than to reason with someone who thinks different. So it is like, I'm speaking of out an extreme. It is, I understand that there are conservatives, that there are people who are in other parts of the spectrum, provided that to think different is something that I really believe in the Rosa Luxemburg quote that freedom means that they all have the right to think different and still have a civil relation. But I am talking about an extreme, fascism also is per se rejecting to think that people who think different. So in that way, it is what I meant to say, that it's impossible to reason with that extreme of the spectrum. And I also have experienced the same as you. I have never been in a situation like that in my life. The people that I had the greatest respect for before and that I admire as colleagues, we don't talk anymore. We are not, what happened in Palestine, it made it impossible to speak to them. And then, how to say, I could not anymore respect them, for their opinion or what they say. And I find it's quite remarkable because aside from that, let's say, that little detail that is the genocide of a people, they are very valuable human beings. And then I could not help but thinking of another quote that said that this applies to Germany during the Nazi regime, that the sympathizers of the regime, they're always very nice people. They were very nice people who, invited you for dinner, and they were good neighbors and joyful people. It was, in fact, the ones that opposed the regime that were not nice people, that they were people that were in a permanent bad mood, that they were annoyed. And of course, I related this to the killjoy of feminism, and in this saying that, yes, perhaps, to be against forms of oppression makes you the contrary of a nice person. So this is regarding this, and in the relation to this, how it is outdated. It is outdated because, incredible enough, for instance, I filmed in 2022 the demonstration in Mexico, and I was amazed at the energy and the inventivity and the beauty of the signs. My next 8th of March was in Spain, in Madrid. And then you didn't have one, but you had two demonstrations. One that was trans-inclusive and one that was trans-exclusive. Now, this is something that didn't happen in Mexico in 2022, and it happened in Madrid in 2023. And I was, the awareness that there are feminists that consider that you have to exclude trans women from feminists or from the struggle or from the rights or having the right to exist. Having the right to have the same rights as everybody else is something that the feeling that it provoked on me was of amazement. I could not understand, I could not believe that someone could call themselves feminist to exclude someone from feminism. So this is something that is not treated or discussed in the film, and which I think is how you say, is a big wounds, let's say, that opened to me, or that I realized after the film was finished. And perhaps also another thing that is not that I was not aware of during the film is, for instance, is how much this is something that happened when the war of invasion of Russia to Ukraine started. I had not realized before how much a colonial power was the Soviet Union. This is something that I may say I was stupid, but it's something that I did not realize. So while I was, of course, I am aware of all the shortcomings and horror that the Stalinist regime unleashed, but I really believe that in those prodigious years of 1917 to 1930, that there was really the possibility of a real revolution. And in fact, there wasn't. And, it is something that I was not aware of. So there are, I would say, to be aware of my stupidity of not realizing kind of counter movements that existed within the feminist and within the communist revolution is something that made the film age for me immediately.
Thank you, Dora. Any other questions? Yeah. I guess we can now officially end the Terran Summit.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you so much. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
for
you so much,
a great
Dora.
summit.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending. Not only yours, but also the other ones. And also thanks everyone that joined us throughout all the sessions. And hopefully see you next year.
Yeah, also just thanks to our funders.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to our
And
funders
Culture
as well. Yeah.
Farmers and the Flitur Foundation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.